Good evening and welcome to Alan's Italy. Tonight we welcome Ric Hirst will be with us to
Thank
talk
you.
about one of the great areas of Alto Lazio, the incredibly beautiful town of Tuscania. So that should be a lot of fun. I want to mention that tonight's show is show number 60, and I can't think of a more fitting way of celebrating that occasion than to have you on the show.
Thank you very
My
much.
friend and compatriot, Ric Hirst. Thank you. So, let's go to my album here. Do this. Oops. Pardon me. I always tell people I wish this could occur faster, but that's the way it is. Okay, so there's there it is, show number 60, and that's what Tuscania looks like. And we'll talk about that a little more. But I have a few things that I'd like to do first. So you may remember that last week we did the loggias of Italy, and I went through a variety of loggias all over the country. And one of the things I mentioned at that time was that if you wanted your own loggia in your own backyard, you could get this, you could get a gazebo. And one of the places you could get a gazebo up here in Woodstock, in the Woodstock area, is to go to a place called Bart's Barns on Route 28, which was the wrong name. So just to correct that, it's called Brad's Barns, of course. And we bought our gazebo here 9 years ago, and I forgot the name. So it's Brad's Barns, and it's a great place. So that takes care of that. My website, if you want to go to my website, and now there's going to be a link to hundreds of more pictures. I only had 10 pictures on the website, and because I was only able to have that by the people who do my website, but they told me that I could, actually not they, but Laura figured out a way of putting a link from the website to Pinterest, which is going to have hundreds of more pictures. So those of you who want to go to the website can do that at www.allansitaly.com. Okay, and now as we get closer, we are actually only 5 weeks from Monday away from leaving for Italy, when we will be first going to Florence and then first going to Orvieto, then going to Florence, and then we're going to Venice for Laura's participation in the Venice Biennale. And that will take place from June 1st to November 24th at the Palazzo Bembo in Venice as part of the 55th Venice Biennale. And more and more people are going. We found out about another person we know who will be coming along. That I hope you'll meet when
We'll be
you're
there.
You'll be there.
Yeah,
So
we'll be there.
you'll be meeting her, and she's bringing somebody she knows. So there's more and more people that are getting on board. And once again, congratulations to Laura. We've been told that the painting, which was shipped there a few weeks ago, has arrived. The paintings, which is basically three smaller paintings of 3x5, which make up a triptych, which will come out a total of 9 feet by 5 feet, has arrived at the Palazzo. So that's a load off our mind. And the postcards that we shipped to Venice have arrived at the hotel, where they'll be waiting for us when we get there. So everything is all set, and we are eager to go. And I just wanted to show you that this is the locale, the venue of the exhibition. It's the Palazzo Bembo, which, we could not have, lucked out and gotten a better place for her exhibition than this palazzo. It's a magnificent palazzo, as you could see. And the name of the show is Personal Structures, and the name of the organization that's sponsoring it is the Global Arts Affairs Foundation, and it'll be in the Biennale for the 6 months during that period of time. So that's what it looks like. And we are actually staying, the very top of the Palazzo Bembo is a little B&B with only 6 rooms, and we will be staying there 3 of the 5 nights that will be in Venice. So that should be a lot of fun. So let's first talk about where Tuscania is located. So, as you could see, Tuscania, and I have to do this, of course. Tuscania is right here, and just to place it according to other uh, uh, towns that we've been to on this show, this whole green area is Lazio, and there's Rome right down there, and as you get further north, this area is called Alto Lazio,
Correct.
Upper Lazio, right? And there
Right.
is the town. There is Umbria off over there to the right, and Tuscany over there to the left. Now, we took you and I actually took our audience to Pitigliano, and then we took them to or I took them to Orvieto, and then your town over here is Roccavecce, and Viterbo is right down here where we went a few weeks ago, and now we're going right over here. It's closer on the map. It doesn't. It's not as close as it looks
No, it's
on the
not
map.
close.
So how far is it from, let's say, Viterbo to Tuscania?
It's about 25 miles.
Right. So okay. So that
I'd say
was
it's on the line. It's almost on the same line away from the coast as Tarquinia is, which is the town just to the southwest of Tuscania, and in fact, the Etruscans love to have their towns not far away from the shore, but not exactly on the shore, because for the most part, the shore along the Tyrrhenian Sea in that area was swampy and it was filled with malaria. So they had most of their major towns, like Tarquinia or Vulci or Cerveteri or Tuscania, maybe 5, 6, 7 miles away from the coast, up on top of an acropolis, a tufa outcrop, a volcanic outcrop.
right. Now, so my first question to you is, the name of the town is Tuscania,
Right,
and of course Tuscany,
right.
and it all comes from the word Etruscan.
Well, it comes from, yes, it comes from the word Tusc, which is part of their name for themselves and for the Etruscans. And Tuscania and Lazio, especially Lazio above Rome, was the heartland of the Etruscan civilization. And Tuscania itself was named Tuscana during Etruscan times, about 3,000 years ago. And Tarquinia was named Tark. So it's not much of a stretch. These names go way, way back.
Yes, absolutely. Now, what about the placement of the town? You mentioned something to me that it's on a road.
Right. Okay. There was a major Etruscan road that went from Cerveteri and Veii, two towns that are more or less near Rome. And this road was an Etruscan road. It was unpaved, but it went through Tuscania, went to the west side of Lago Bolsena to a town called Bisenzio.
Right. Okay. Here's Lago
Sena.
Bolsena right over here.
Right. And then it swung around during Etruscan times and went to Orvieto, which was one of the major towns in Umbrian.
That's right here.
Correct. So what you have is, this was a major agricultural road. It was crisscrossed by roads during its high point around 400 BC. And shortly after Rome conquered most of the Etruscan countryside and most of the Etruscan cities around 300 BC, they began a road called the Via Clodia, which went through many of the towns in Alto Lazio and went all the way up to Vetolonia, which is near Grosseto in Tuscany.
Right. That's Rosetta would be kind of over here.
That's correct.
In this area on the coast. Okay, now we're starting with a rather humorous occurrence.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2010, Sharon and Rick took us on a little tour, and we left their town of Rocalvece, and we went to Lake Bolsena. We actually came this way, and we went to the town of Bolsena, around the lake, to Pitigliano over here, where I've always wanted to go in southern Tuscany. And then we came back, I believe, this way.
That's correct.
And as we came around here, we had a very interesting occurrence, which we'll show you in just a moment. Then, when we came back to this region in May of 2012, Rick and Sharon took us first to Viterbo, then to Tuscania, and then we came back this way, I suppose, and had the same exact occurrence. And this was what the occurrence was. It was, and this is we have two videos in a row here. So I'll let you shift the sound on this and tell me when you're ready, Alan. Okay.
Okay, this is on the western side of Lago Bolsena, and just as it was 3,000 years ago, there are still shepherds all over Italy, and sheep go from one holding to another so that they don't overgraze one part of the area.
Right. Now, 2 years later, less than 2 years later, we once again were riding along a road, and sure enough,
All right, there they are. Well, that's another herd, I'm sure.
different herd.
It's a different herd.
Different herd.
But it's more or less the same thing. Sheep have the right of way on even major roads in Alto Lazio and even in Tuscany. So it's a major export. The wool is a major export. And there you are. We still have shepherds.
Right. So now we're not going to be seeing you for very long on our next trip when we're in your area, but I certainly assume that you will call up the sheep.
Yeah, I call up 1-800
1-800 sheep appear.
Yeah, right.
And sure enough, at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, wherever we happen to be, even
That's
if
correct.
we're in the heart of Orvieto, which we expect to be, there will be a herd of sheep.
There will be a herd of sheep.
Okay,
yes.
good. So that was we always found that very, very funny. This is a map of Tuscania, and I'll do the pointing and you do the talking.
Okay. This is the modern town. Well, modern. It is the town that's sort of frozen in time since the 17th century. The walls are from the 16th century. The town itself has two sections. The lower section right here. Yeah, let me just.
Can you do that?
Yeah, the lower section, which is here, is really the medieval part, and this upper section had to be rebuilt after Charles VII bombarded it in 1549. Oh no, pardon me, wrong numbers. 1495.
Okay.
So the town is old. There are still remnants of the Etruscan walls and a couple of remnants of the Cyclopean Etruscan walls, the huge blocks of stone. But as I say, so there's a lower section of the town. At one time, during the Etruscan period, the town was bigger. In fact, it went around here.
Wow.
So it was 2 or 3 times its current size, and it was a very important town for agricultural reasons, because, well, you'll see later, it has this beautiful series of lowlands, which still are farmed today, which is always amazing to me after 3,000 years.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Shall I?
Yeah.
Okay, so here's where we begin. Go ahead.
Okay, so around 280 BC, Rome began to pave the old Etruscan Rome. It was called Via Clodia, after Clodius, the consul of the time, one of the consuls. And this is a portion of the road. It's not the full width of the road. It's just a portion about one half the width. You don't really see the curbs on either side, but you'll notice that this is made of basalt polygonal blocks fitted together very, very closely, and it circumnavigated the city. A couple of years ago, I went on a tour of the Via Clodia, and it was an amazing tour because you got to see many aspects of Roman ruins, from the Etruscan period, and you just sort of were wandering around in the outer areas of what used to be a very large city for the Roman Empire, and the examples around the number of necropoli graveyards, Etruscan graveyards around, is very numerous. There are about 9 cemeteries or necropoli. So the Via Clodia went through all of these and then went north.
Now, these roads were built by Roman soldiers.
No,
No?
no, they were not
Pardon me?
built by Roman soldiers. They were built by various teams of workmen in the various locations, the various provinces. It was usually for the movement of soldiers.
The troops, right?
Yeah, to facilitate that. But the Via Clodia, interestingly enough, wasn't for that. It was actually for just moving goods. It was a major mercantile road. So it started off sort of with the Via Cassia from Rome, and then wound up intersecting the Via Aurelia, which is the coastal road, was and still is the coastal road near the Tyrrhenian Sea. So this particular road was not a military transport area, and one of these days when we go to Volci, you'll actually see a cross section of the road and how they were built.
Right. Okay.
The other thing is I had gone to a lecture in a little town called Arlena de Castro, which is just a bit north of Tuscania. And we were attending an archaeological discussion about some of the digs that had been going on there. And perhaps half of the town of Arlena de Castro was in this meeting, which I thought was amazing. People love their history there.
Yeah.
So as they were speaking, they mentioned that a lot of the family names are still Etruscan. So the continuity of the families over thousands of years is quite extraordinary.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's wonderful.
It really is. And you get that in Italy.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
Probably other places in Europe as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a
And I can't even trace my relatives back beyond like 120 years,
me neither. So
which is really pathetic. Anyway,
so here we have.
here's where we begin.
Okay, this is one of the defensive towers. It no longer is a tower, but during the period of the communes, which was around 1100 A.D., most of the great families had very, very, very tall towers, and they were all defensive towers in these little towns. Well, not so little towns. So this is one of the remains of them, and the entrance to its compound you can see on the left, and the major tower is, of course, that block on the right. It probably lasts from 1300, based upon the types of windows that are still remaining above the archway. There are many like this in Tuscania. You'll just sort of come upon them in between ordinary houses. which were built probably in the 1700s.
Now, these are these towers now inhabited? I mean, are those? I see
Yes.
windows. Are they now apartments?
Yeah, they're now apartments. Sometimes they're B and B's.
Oh, yes, of course, of
So,
course.
these are sort of dotted all over the city, along with a huge monastery
And
next to the
that
edge.
arch led into the town. Was there like a?
Probably that arch led into the compound for the person who had built it, the family that had built
I
it
see. I
originally.
see.
But now the arch still is there.
Right.
So it's nice that something is around for
Beautiful, beautiful. The
1,000
way
years.
the mixture of the old and the new.
Yeah.
The new. This.
Yeah, the old and the new, sort of the new. So this is a nice view of the defensive walls. It's from a car park that's outside of the city walls because it's almost impossible to park, of course, inside the city. But you'll notice that it has several defensive towers, and these walls have been built and destroyed, built and destroyed, built and destroyed over a period of 3,000 years. But this last group was built in 1536. So they're still there, and of course they're still defensive in nature. So there you see whatever the outcrop, and that's a tufaceous outcrop over there.
So we're now spanning to the right, right?
Correct.
So what we were looking at was to the left of this scene,
Right.
and now we're kind of spanning, going towards the right.
That's correct.
Okay. And then we continue
You
going.
continue going. You can see remnants of the towers along the walls. It's very dramatic.
It's really dramatic. It reminds me very much of Lucca.
Yeah.
You ever been to Lucca?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, of course. Doesn't that kind of remind you a little bit
Well,
of Lucca?
yes and no, because Lucca's walls have been changed dramatically since Louis Bonaparte.
Oh, really? But there's like a road here, and then there's like usually
Oh, yeah,
parking,
yeah.
parking over there, and
Yeah.
then the wall is kind of that high, as opposed to Orvieto, whose walls are much higher up.
That's
I mean,
correct.
You have to go very high to get into the town.
That's
for
right.
example.
But this is the lower town. Interestingly enough, this was a little later. We'll see where the original heart of the town
Right.
was.
Okay.
So this is one of the major roads. This is the Via Cavour, and it is. This is a municipal building that's in the center, and this is part of the new town. That is to say, the town that was built in the 16th century after the bombardment.
Now this is not a one-way street, is it?
No.
So you just never know when. I mean, they have signs, but sometimes it's difficult
Right,
to tell.
this is not
I
a
like
one-way.
the way there are a lot of streets in Italy where it's one road and then there's a building and then it kind of branches off into two roads.
Right.
That happens a lot in
A lot.
Florence. In Florence, especially.
Right. Especially as you go from the medieval area to the grid-like area from the 16th century on. Because the new area is more grid-like and it doesn't have those
see.
strange divided streets.
Yeah, I see.
So this is looking down the
Right.
street.
Is this looking in the opposite direction?
That's correct.
Right. And there's a ristorante over there on the right.
Yeah, some quite good restaurants.
Really?
In this town, yes.
Now, did we eat in Tuscania?
No.
No, we ate in Viterbo?
Yes, that's
okay.
right.
Yeah, okay.
Now this is the major. This street ends up here in the Piazza Basile, and on this side is an ex chiesa, and this is the quote unquote new municipal building that was built in 1600.
Okay, so we must tell our audience that a chiesa is a church.
A church, yes. I'm sorry.
And that's a municipal building.
That's the municipal building.
I did that a few times, and Laura said you got to tell people
Oh,
some of these things,
okay,
'cause
sorry.
people may not know what a chiesa is.
Right.
Okay, so
So this that municipal building was also done as a response in the 16th century to repaving or not repaving, but actually paving the streets. This is the first time since the Roman Empire that the streets were paved.
Right. Okay.
And this is to the side. You'll see along the walls that, along this side of the walls, right here,
Right.
you'll see the back end of a sarcophagus cover, an Etruscan sarcophagus cover. The Etruscan monuments in the area were heavily vandalized in the 19th century, and much of it taken away and then reconstituted in various museums in Northern Europe and the Vatican. So there are a few places left from this area. Some of the more recent discoveries, those in Norcia, haven't been touched because they became government property.
I see. And they're actually on the
The
wall
little
there.
wall, yeah, they were mounted on the little
Mounted
wall in
on
the
the wall.
19th century.
It's a good idea. And is this? No,
That's the
we'll
X.
come to a close-up view later.
That's correct.
Yeah.
This is the ex church,
Right.
which is used for exhibitions.
Right. There it is.
Ah, there it is. That's the view. And what you're looking at behind the sarcophagus cover is an area called Il Poggio, the hill, which is the old part of the town. That's where you'll see a couple of remaining defensive towers. They were actually
I
taller.
see.
They
were.
They were. They were much taller. And there were many, many more of them. So what we're looking at is we're looking to a view to the west of Piazza Basile.
And right here, of course, are the sarcophagus covers.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
And they just put them right on the wall.
They just put them right on the wall because in the middle and late portions of the 19th century, they had this great resurgence of Italian nationalism, and the discovery of Etruscan artifacts really, played into that. So they were playing up their Etruscan background.
Okay. And that's a more distant view of that.
Right.
And
Right.
there are two very, very good-looking gentlemen over there talking. I don't know who they are.
I don't know. I don't
They look a little like us.
A
so it could
little
be
bit,
us. But
yeah.
that's a great view. And there's a real close-up.
There's a real close-up. Now, of course, these are eroded over time. These particular statues are made out of a stone called nemphro, which is a volcanic stone, but it's not really as dense as, let's say, obsidian or basalt. So it does disintegrate over time.
Now let's talk a little about why Etruscan sarcophagus covers, and a lot of, I guess the sarcophagus covers
Right.
mostly, show reclining figures.
Okay, well, because the Etruscans loved to party. According to the Romans, they really loved to party. So much of the
And that's
time,
coming from people who
Love
didn't do
to
a shabby
party.
job of
Right.
partying, right?
So they were known for that, and also for their religiosity, which is pretty funny. So they're shown sort of sitting down. A lot of them have in the outstretched arm. I can't tell whether it's there, but they have a libation bowl,
Right, right.
which is to show their gratitude toward the gods. And they're all resting there. And many of the sarcophagus covers actually show their wife as well as
Right.
themselves.
That very, very famous one that we're going to be looking at in a couple of months when we do an Etruscan show. The very famous one. Where is that? Is that located? That's located in Rome, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
That's a Villa Giulia.
That's of a husband and wife.
That's correct. And there are several. Some of them are great. Actually, the museum in the neighboring Etruscan town of Tarquinia has a wonderful national museum which contains some excellent antiquities from the Etruscan period.
Right, right. Okay.
And they were overlooking it once again. Actually, down here, this little area down here is a view of the Largo Sette Canale, which is Largo is like a piazza, and Sette Canale means seven fountains.
Oh,
That that was built during the Etrusco-Romano times.
right.
And unfortunately, Charles VII's troops blew it up, but then they repaired it shortly after 1495, so that now it's more or less still exists in its existing area, and they reused the Roman and Etruscan fragments.
It's a beautiful town, and it's not really high up, like for example, like Montepulciano or
No.
Montalcino, but it has enough elevation for it to really look quite charming.
Well, one of the reasons that it's on the lower end of this is because just to the south is the original Acropolis, which was the original Etruscan city. And as a matter of fact, the original Villanovan village. So usually the Etruscans were up on a high point, and that they had huge defensive walls which would leap up from the cliff face, and just as in Orvieto. And
Right, right.
but it was abandoned. There was a period of time when there was malaria in the upper town, and then the coup de grace was once again Charles VII's army blew up the fortifications up there.
Yeah, they did. They blew these fortifications. They blew up things simply as a warfare type
Well,
activity, or they just did it in malice.
Well, they were really angry because they had been fighting their way through central Italy, and Charles VII himself was being hosted in Viterbo. But the main portion of the army was sent off toward Tuscania. And there the army commanders asked the rectors of the town, nominally under papal control, to let them in. And they wouldn't do it. So in retaliation, the army bombarded the town and massacred a good chunk of its citizenry.
Jeez. There's a close-up of that view that we were looking at. So
I love those zigzag roads that, it goes
Yeah,
out
yeah.
and then it comes down and then you have to come down
I
again.
know that's very, very typical.
And there's a view of the Sette Canale. It's
Seven canals.
seven
So,
seven fountains,
seven.
channels,
Okay.
7 channels. Because actually, you can see them here.
Right. I
Each
see.
one of
I
these
see.
little spigots. What can
It's
you
the
say?
same
I
view,
mean, this
same
view.
view. Same view.
Yeah, but the
Close-up
arrange.
view. This is where people live.
Yeah,
This is
that's
where
right.
people live.
About 8,000 people live within the walls.
Right.
And here's a road called the Lavello Road, Via Lavello, which leads down toward the foot of this area.
Beautiful countryside.
Yeah. Nice little home.
A nice home with a beautiful little door. Laura loves to take doors, as my audience
We
is
know.
quite aware by now. Yes, all the door pictures.
And that is the Lavello Tower. Now, there's an interesting story behind this one. This is one of the last huge defensive towers. There was this huge conflict between 1349, especially between 1349 and 1450, actually all the way up to 1480, among all of the various fighting groups. Tuscania happens to be on the northern edge of the Papal States. And at one time, it was a borderland between the dukedoms to the north that were in fealty to the various Tuscany dukedoms and the Papal States. So there would be fights among various rural barons as to who would control it. And then internally, many of the rich families in Tuscania wanted to control it themselves. They didn't want to pay money to the barons. They didn't want to pay taxes to the Papal States. And so there were these internal science struggles for hundreds of years. And this is one of the last bursts of it. A condottiere named Il Tartaglia had built this tower along with a huge fortress. And he was a terrible person who was eventually beheaded by one of the Sforzas.
That's good. I won't say that's good.
Well, it wasn't good, but it was great for the townsfolk who then proceeded to destroy the fortress.
Right, I see.
So it was he was not a very nice fellow to them.
Okay.
So this is one of the main streets.
Right.
I mean,
and that's a really charming looking street with the restaurants, with the little cafes off on the right side, and the flower, the
flower
the shrubbery over there on the left, and the little balcony up on the top there.
Right.
It's really, really a pretty street.
Yeah.
This is very typical of, Italian towns.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the Grand Fountain. It was built in the 16th century, and it's right in front of the cathedral. And the cathedral was reestablished in the heart of the city after, once again, had been bombarded. Mm-hmm. So it is now opposite that fountain, and although it has very old origins, it's been changed many times. Mm-hmm. And there it is.
The church.
That's the Church of San Giacomo. And you can see that it has sort of this Renaissance, early Baroque flavor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love looking at these facades. It's a very simple facade.
Very simple. Well, after a while, Tuscania, while it was a bishopric for 1,000 years, it lost its power to Viterbo roughly at this time. And so while it looks like kind of like the Church of San Lorenzo in Viterbo, maybe it had the same architect.
It also looks a little like the Church of San Spirito in Florence, a
right.
little bit, with that circle on top.
Right, and so this was a more modest approach to church building for now a more modest town.
Now I'm going to put you on the spot and ask you a question, and it's not to. I'm just curious myself, and you may know the answer.
Yeah.
When you have a column
right.
built into a house like that,
yeah,
there's a name for that when it's not
pilaster.
Pilaster. Excellent, thank you. That's what it's called. It's not really a column. It's kind of
no, it's not structural.
Pilaster, right? Okay, good. Thank you very much.
And these are just some of the streets around there. The
very
usual.
Beautiful.
Yeah. This is the Rivellino Palace. It was I don't know why they call it the Rivellino Palace, but at any rate, because it's not a fortress, but you can see it has a typical loggia on the top. It's has this very graceful but informal look.
Right. I used this loggia last week when we were doing the loggias in Italy. So I mentioned that this was a really beautiful one.
This is a wonderful shot from the former fortress, and it's looking to the south. On the right-hand side is the former cathedral, the Cathedral of St. Peter. And on the left-hand side is called the Castle of the Rivellino. That was where, in 1200, the original town center was. It was on this hill. And it had fortifications all around it. You can see a couple of the towers, and you can see that the Rivellino was connected to the city walls over there. It's now a total ruin. The cathedral is not a total ruin. The cathedral was abandoned because of the bombardment and the malaria. But half the town had been up there for, I don't know, for 2,500 years. Half the town had been up there. So it was, but you can see this beautiful countryside, and that's exactly where the Etruscans would build their early towns, on top of something, so you could see who was coming up to greet you.
Right.
And the church itself is built over a Roman temple, which is built over an Etruscan temple. So they always reused, if they could, they would always reuse the foundations, because it cost a lot of money for the town
Sure.
to build a foundation.
Right. And you could actually go down into that, to the foundations, which we did together,
That's right.
and that was really nice.
So there's the facade. It was originally built in the 8th century, and then redecorated and lengthened in the 11th. It has this beautiful rose window and a Romanesque portal, sort of a Lombard Romanesque portal, and a false loggia above that. So it's a perfect example of early medieval or early and late medieval architecture, religious
So
architecture.
what year are we talking about now?
Probably around 800 AD, and then the facade was changed somewhat. The central portion, at least, was changed around 1100. That's why it has multiple steps to the main door. And there, on the grounds, they have a discussion, both in Italian and English.
Right. So that was very nice, and there's the layout of it.
Right. And there are there's an old fountain that had been established before 1500, probably to feed horses or to water horses. And there are two of the defensive towers. And you can see that a course of the defensive tower at the bottom was from one period, and then they built it up on a second period. But this is an area that was ringed by these defensive towers, and they were on top of Etruscan walls, Etrusco-Romano walls. And there's the art school.
Right. When we came upon this scene, there was a class of students with a teacher, and they were sketching, drawing the church, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we watched them for a few moments, and they were into their own thing, of course. And what's this arch here?
There's speculation about this arch. There's nothing written, apparently, about this arch, except as part of a speculation about its use. At one time, arches were used during the Etruscan period to indicate that someone was now passing through to another life, either a life of marriage or death.
Oh.
And it was more symbolic than anything else.
I see. So it's for ceremonial purposes.
Right. And this is the one of the two side doors.
One of the two side doors of the church
Right.
of San Pietro, right?
That's correct. And these are probably Etrusco-Romano sarcophagi. And these mostly they have a Roman influence to the when you see the eagles
Right.
on the
eagles.
side. Cornucopias are sort of available decorations for all of the Mediterranean.
Close
And
up.
there's you see a soldier's uniform.
The soldier's uniform on the left, and it looks like his shield on the right. Right?
Well, I don't know whether it's a shield or some. It could be a shield. I mean, I have no idea. But it's from
Definitely
the
Roman. Definitely Roman.
Etrusco-Roman, at least. Etruscan was actually spoken in this region up to the 2nd century A.D. So, and the Romans held on to this territory. So,
There's another view of the class doing their work with the teacher over there on the right and the towers.
that's correct.
This was a wonderful day. And now we're driving back
Yes.
on the road, right?
We're driving down the road back toward the town. What you see is the cross section of the hypocaust from a Roman bath from about 100 A.D.
What's a hypocaust?
A hypocaust is a portion of the underground chambers that heated up the hot pools in a Roman bath. They were heated up by hot air, usually coal or wood fired, and the hot air would go through the entire hypocaust. So they would have 3 baths. There was the cold bath, the medium
Frigidarium,
bath, the frigidarium,
tepidarium,
and the caldarium.
caldarium.
That's right. And underneath the caldarium was this. This is now called the Grotto of the Queen, but of course it's just a local name.
That's amazing. This is an amazing thing.
Yeah, right. I mean, when you see things that are dotted like this all over the Roman countryside.
That's Italy. That's Italy.
This is the entrance to Il Tartaglia's former palace. The archway that you see there that's one of the few remaining things. The building is from 1400, and that's right now a B&B.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. 5 minutes. Okay, so at any rate, the Lavello Tower is on the right, and in front of it was the Piazza di Armi. It was the place where there was the parade ground for the troops.
Right, and we'll have a better view of that in a few minutes.
Right, and actually, this is part of it.
This is part of it.
This
right.
is part of it. So it was a very large fortress. There we are. You can see the defensive walls once again. And that was right in front of the fortress, part of the Piazza d'Armi. And once
That's
again, a
another
view of the
another view.
Rivellino of...
Looking from here,
That's
if we were
correct.
looking over the wall to the right, this is what we'd be seeing.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's what that is. Beautiful countryside.
Yeah, beautiful
This
countryside.
is the staging area for the army,
Right.
right? And another view of
Of the countryside. And as I say, you have to remember that this has been farmed continuously, just like that, for 3,000 years or more.
Wow,
I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing it right.
it's beautiful. There's another view
Another view of
from that spot, looking at the road below.
This is a view of the Rivellino directly.
And spanning towards the. So what is
Toward
this?
the west.
Towards the west. This is what the.
And you can see these are individual farms because
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
bordered by trees and grasslands.
And there's another view of that. We have to kind of move. So we're spanning back and forth now.
Right.
There's a close-up of that. A little overcast. That same view from that going back towards the
Towards the Piazza d'Armi.
right. And another view of that. And the same thing. As we get further and further away.
Okay. And this is a nice view of where it is. And as I say, that's
Right.
a B&B over there.
Right. Okay. Some more views of the walls.
And a view of a contemporary fountain.
Right.
It's probably from the 17th century.
Right. Some more walls.
A nice-
Close-up of the fountain. A little bird
With the little bird. I like the
taking
little
a little
bird.
drink.
Right.
And this is a clock.
Yeah, it's a clock.
Calendar.
Yeah, a clock and calendar, and
From what time?
it's probably from the 20th century.
Oh.
I would say after World War II.
Okay.
Especially, it may be after 1971 because there was a major earthquake in Tuscania in 71.
I see. A residence. Very pretty. And we're driving back now to Orvieto,
Right.
where we were staying in Orvieto, and there's the road back. Is this where we encountered
The sheep, yes.
the sheep? So
Yeah, we encountered.
we're driving back through beautiful countryside, and we come into view from the south, I believe,
Right.
of Orvieto. That's a
Right.
beautiful view of Orvieto over there on the hill. That's a
Right.
closer view, and an even closer view of the beauty of one of my favorite towns in all of Italy. Now, next week on Alan's Italy, we will deviate from our usual themes of Italy, and we're going to be talking about the origins of Woodstock Public Access Television, which took place in the early 1970s. And we have two guests that we're going to be interviewing, Bart Friedman and Toby Carey, who live in the area, and they will be on next week. I hope you join us for that. It should be very interesting. And let me go over here for a moment and say to Rick, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. It was wonderful, as always, having you.
Thank you.
And that is the last time you'll be on the show now until you return from Italy.
That's correct.
So you'll be going away at the end of April for 6 weeks.
Right.
Have a great trip.
I will. And I'll
Okay?
see you there.
And we'll see you there. Okay, so for Rick and for me, buonanotte e buona fortuna.